we increase the mechanization of our agriculture. We are currently at around 40%. We want to drive it to 80%. These are some of the interventions that fell through when we didn't get our trajectory right. But what I said, speaking to what you have said on cost of energy, there was an attempt, which was not well thought out, to try and introduce subsidies in that space, which failed miserably because we were spending 3 billion shillings every year to subsidize energy. There was no increase in consumption of electricity. There was no reduction of any products that were coming out of our factories. There was no increase of people who are getting employed because we had brought subsidy. It was just a waste. Nobody benefited. The consumers did not benefit. So it ended up just lining the bottom line of a few companies and a few people. So what I have insisted and what government of Kenya is going to do, we are going to support production of food. We are going to interrogate the cost of energy, right? We have 3-4 lines which I have instructed. We're going to spend 1 billion shillings to sort out 3 lines of transmission, 3 transmission lines, so that we can retire the plant we have in Moroni that is producing energy at 52 US cents, which is, we are getting power from our hydros at 4 US cents. Can you compare between 4 US cents and 52? And it's because we have power in Takwel, which we are not using maximum because of a transmission line. We have other hydros that we are not using because of transmission line. So I have already instructed that we complete those transmission lines within the next 10 months so that we make sure that we bring down the cost of energy, because we will retire some of the thermal power that is causing this huge cost. Right.
So what do you do to the PPAs, the power purchase agreements, and the independent power producers? Because according to the task force report, it was talking about the power cost for the financial year 2020. It was 87 billion shillings, which is 66% of the sales. They went ahead to say that, yes, the Kenyan was contributing about 72% of the power, but the resources that they were taking is about 48%. For the independent power producers, they are giving Kenya Power about 25% of power, but they're taking away about 47% of the payments. So how do you deal with that, even as you go to the different transmission lines?
Precisely. First, the turbine we are retiring in Moroni belongs to government. It's a Kenyan turbine. So that we will have no conversation. We will just retire that. Then we will have to have a candid discussion with our thermal energy producers. And for your information, we need them. The problem is, for the last 5 years, we haven't generated much of power. We have 400 megawatts of capped geothermal energy, which I have instructed that we should move with speed to unlock that potential. Because much as we want to retire the thermal power, we have a challenge of the amount of supply of power during the peak hours. So we are juggling between making sure that we use what we have efficiently, we generate the much more efficient power sources so that we can begin the journey to retire the thermal ones. But this requires a consistent, approach and consistent follow-up. And that's what I intend to do.
All right. Your Excellency, going back to the cost of living, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says inflation rate is now at 9.5, at least by November last year. When you come into office, the first thing you do is to remove subsidy on the likes of Unga. Now, the big question is, as you run the program on subsidizing the cost of production, is government saying it was unable to also run the program on subsidizing Unga so much that you remove the pinch on Kenyans who are feeling the pain as they go to the supermarkets to buy Unga?
John, do you know how much those subsidies were costing us? It was costing us 16 billion shillings every year to subsidize fuel. It was costing us 3 billion shillings every did I say every year? Every month.
Every month.
It was costing us 8 billion shillings every month to subsidize unga. It was costing us 3 billion shillings to subsidize electricity. A total of 25, 26 billion shillings every month. The decision to subsidize unga, fuel, and electricity was not an economic decision. It was a political decision. It was meant to placate Kenyans to vote in a certain way. Unfortunately, Kenyans did not buy it because they did not feel it. They looked for this unga of 100 shillings, they did not find. They waited for the price of things to come down, it did not come down, right? Because it was a political decision. So, did you, John, expect me seriously to be elected president? And I know what is right, to continue to do what is wrong. Because what would that do? In a year, we were going to spend 300 billion shillings on subsidy that benefits nobody. You know, it would have been the most reckless thing to do. But just to respond to your issue of inflation, yes. In October, the inflation went actually not 9.5, it went to 9.6, right? But because of the interventions we have made, inflation is now at 9.1. It's on its way down because we are making the right decisions. It will not be sorted out in a week or two or 1 month. You know, we got ourselves here because of 3 years of making the wrong decisions. But I am promising the country that within the next 1 year, we will have pulled the country from here. We will have set ourselves on the trajectory of making sure that we never again buy unga at 240, you know. Thankfully, we have put the brakes on the continued increase of prices of unga and all the other food products. At least unga now is averaging around 190 shillings from 230. The price of cooking oil has come down. So we are beginning to see the journey to sanity. And it is my intention, not just to promote the production we are doing at the moment, but also to make sure that the gap that exists between what the farmers are producing and before the next harvest is that we're going to import maize and some foodstuffs, about 10 million bags between the month of February and June, to make sure that we keep the tabs on the prices of basic food commodities not going up. We are also working full steam. And you saw me yesterday in Galana. Many people believe Galana was a wrong thing or it failed. Galana did not fail. It was made to fail, right? And I want to promise you, John and your team here and Kenyans, speaking to them directly, that we are going to make Galana work. And it's going to work beginning this February. We are going to plant maize in the first 10,000 acres. And we already have the mechanism to do it. In another 8 months, we are going to do the next 10,000 acres. And in the next 2 months, 3 months, I will be in Galana to launch the construction of the dam that will make it possible for us to do the next 300,000 acres. It is possible for us to produce 10 million bags from Galana to seal the gap that we are currently going to import, just by making sure that it works. And for your information, it is going to work. And just to show you that Galana Gulalu was sabotaged, go to the Ministry of Lands. The fellows who sabotaged it had actually subdivided it into little pieces of land.
Mr. President,
4 acres.
Just for clarity.
I don't know what, you know.
That's for clarity.
Let me ask you, do you know who was running the government of Kenya?
Yeah.
Yes.
So why are you asking the obvious?
We don't know. You're the president. You should tell us.
And the
But you are
the deputy president.
But you are Kenyans.
Yes.
You know, when I was shown the door and I was operating from the streets as deputy president, there were people who were running this administration.
Mm-hmm.
So you
unfortunately, but for the good news for the people of Kenya, it will not happen. I have cancelled the parceling of that land. I have stopped it, and it will not happen because subdividing Galana into 2 acres, 3 acres is actually going to send people there who are going to require food relief to even live there. When we can actually, let me ask you, good people, Galana can feed 3-4 million Kenyans. Why do you want to go and settle 10,000 people? Even if you do math upside down, how does 4 million people compare with 10,000?
Mr. President, this question obviously asks you, and you've consistently said the subsidies were there, to quote you, to line the pockets of a few people. I think it is bestowed on you and to Kenyans to draw a line and say, who are these few people? Say 300 billion a year, for instance, for the last 3 years. That's 900 billion. Is there responsibility?
So what are you saying? I didn't understand.
Is there responsibility? Are those people who you're blaming them, are they going to take responsibility?
The subsidies did not take 3 years. The subsidies were introduced. The Unga one was introduced for 1 month. It failed miserably.
So how much money did we lose?
Yeah, we didn't lose. We paid people 8 billion shillings, but I don't know. They are saying they supplied the maize, but nobody saw the 100 shilling maize, right? If you ask Kenya Power, they are supposed to have been paid 26 billion. I asked the MD of Kenya Power, so how much money were you paid? Apart from the money that Treasury gave, which is 4 billion shillings, and it was given in July. No other money was given to them. So what did Kenya Power do? It just went into debt, more debt. So you are financing a subsidy using debt. What kind of logic is that?
Mr. President, that is injustice, that is impunity, that is corruption. What then will your government do to make sure that they get to the bottom of this? Or do we just let it go?
Let me tell you, because nobody, like for example, the Unga subsidy. When I came into office, I said we have to audit. You know, I think already 4 billion shillings had been paid. I said before we pay the next 4 billion, we have to audit. So you're telling us you supplied this maize. Who to? Where was it supplied? You know, that's number one. Number two, when I asked Kenya Power whether they were paid this 26 billion, nobody paid them. So what did they do? They didn't charge the customers, so they went into more debt. That's why today I have to look for money to get Kenya Power out of the mess that was that they were put in by subsidies. So these are political decisions that are made for political expediency. You know, I am not here to make political decisions because we cannot get Kenya where we all want. We have to make some of the difficult decisions. Many people are wondering, why did I cancel the subsidies? It looks nice to talk about subsidies, but you know, you have to interrogate, is it correct? It could be popular, but is it right? It is not right.
Mr. President, what do you tell a Kenyan who is watching you tonight, feeling the pinch of that pain, and knowing that there was subsidy before, and they cannot afford that unga now? What do you tell them? How long do they have to wait?
My good friend, even with the subsidy, how many Kenyans got the 100 shilling unga? How many? You know, nothing really changed for millions of Kenyans. So it is not correct for you to say they were having subsidy help them to get anything. Subsidy helped a few people. It never helped the consumer.
Right, but the cost of living...
The most important thing that has happened is that I have stopped the hemorrhage of public funds. Yeah? We are not going to go into more debt. And let me tell you, good people, the one thing that I had to do, which was the most important thing to do, is to put the brakes on the appetite for debt. And for your information, even what we had agreed, or what the former government had agreed with the World Bank, to borrow an extra 900 billion to cover the gap that existed in the budget. I have come, interrogated the 900 billion and said, please, good people, we are going to net off 300 billion. We are actually going to borrow 300 billion less because it is the right thing to do. We cannot continue to run our economy on the foundation of debt. We are going to bankrupt this country.
What happens to the deficit?
And that is why I have, you will see in the supplementary budget, we have cut down by 300 billion, the borrowing. And what have I done? I have started the trajectory to build our own revenue. You know, 3 things. Everybody is going to pay debt. It's going to pay tax, right? Starting with William Ruto. Everybody is going to pay tax. There will be no waiver for nobody, right? You saw people waiving, you know, the taxes for their businesses, you know. You buy this bank, you sell that bank, you waive taxes. You know, it's not going to happen under my administration. Everybody's going to pay debt. And number 3.
Who did that, for the record?
You know, number 3, you go find out. Number 3, we are installing a new tax system. Because at the moment, we've been collecting 60% of VAT, for example. Collectible VAT. Almost 40% we are not collecting because it goes here, it pilferages there, it goes this way. The system we are now installing is going to drive the collection of VAT to between 90 and 97%.
A follow-up on that.
That way, we should be able to collect an extra 200 to 300 billion. In fact, the target I have given to KRA is that by June this year, we should be able to collect an extra 500 billion by June this year.
How is that going to happen, Mr. President? Because when it comes to increasing the tax base and cutting spending on borrowing, then the country's business environment must be different. Something must change in the country's business environment. What are the administration's plans to improve the ease of doing business, which essentially will see a broadening of the country's tax base?
Precisely, that's what I'm telling you, my good sister Linda. I am telling you, Michelle, sorry, Michelle. That's why I'm telling you, everybody first must pay tax. Yeah, let's begin there. This is not the animal farm where some animals are more equal than others. This is Kenya. We are all equal. Everybody pays their portion of the tax. And number 2, we are going to make sure that more people come into the space where they work with government to pay tax. What am I doing about it? As you just said, we are going to digitize all government services in the next 6 months. Yeah, e-citizen, which we had started in, we had started, ran into headwinds, and nobody wanted to sort it out. I came in, I called the e-citizen guys. We have sorted out the e-citizen shenanigans, and in the next 6 months, every government service will be available online, digitally. And with it, every government service where tax is payable is going to be collectible online. I am not going to wait for anybody to say, okay, I will file a return at the end of the month. There will be nothing like that. We will be paying tax as we spend our money, or as we do our business. That way, I can be able to broaden the tax base. I can be able to seal the leakages in the whole system. And watch this space. I intend to collect an extra 1 trillion shillings in the next 24 months and double our current collection by 2027 to make sure that we begin to drive the country from the cliff of debt back to sanity. And that's how we're going to take this forward.
Mr. President, now that you have engaged us on public debt, I have two questions. The first question is, out of our collection currently, about 65% goes to the payment of debt. Now, the dollar, when the shilling falls, that also increases our debt by about 30 billion shillings. What is your plan to ensure you get us out of this public debt crisis?
One bullet. We collect every collectible revenue in Kenya, and everybody pays their piece, right? How will we sort this out? I have told you, I have given you my, because there is no miracle required. There is no magic required. It's just basic numbers. And it's not even difficult numbers of algorithm and whatever. It's just plus and minus, right? We are collecting 2 trillion. We are spending 1.4 trillion to pay debt. We're remaining with how much? 600 million, right? Our salaries alone is 700 billion Kenyan shillings. So we have to borrow money to give to the counties. We have to borrow money to do operation and maintenance. We have to borrow. It cannot work like that, my friend. So what do we have to do?
Yes.
We need to make our numbers add up. So first thing, we drive our revenue, to make sure that and cut down on our spending. So I am doing two things. I am cutting down on our spending. It was projected that our deficit would be 6 point something. I have forced it to come to 5.8. Next year, my projection with my team is that we want to bring the fiscal deficit to 4.4%, so that we progressively reduce debt, progressively push our own resources and use our own resources to run our own our development. Because if we continue in this trajectory, Ken, if we continued in this trajectory of borrowing money left, right, and center, we will drive the country into bankruptcy.
Your country, Mr. President, is classified by IMF as a high-risk debt distressed country, together with the countries like Ghana, Malawi, Zambia, and the rest. Now, I'll give you an example of just two countries. The GDP per capita for Ghana is $2,445.29 US. For Kenya, is a little lower with about 400, which is about 2006 US dollars. Now, my question is, Ghana has defaulted. Do you see your country, Kenya, defaulting? And if your country, I'll just give a context, if your country, Kenya, defaults, what will we do? Increasingly, your government has been seen to be facing the West more than the East. You'll have to go renegotiate with China. Now, if this happens, what is your plan? Because Ghana has defaulted. We are categorized with Ghana in the same frame.
First, Ken, you're telling me your country. So which is your country? I thought it was our country.
You're in charge.
I'm in charge, but it's our country. It is our country.
Yes.
So this country of ours, which you and me have equal stakes, right? We only have different jobs. Will not default. That one I want to give you my assurance. We are not in that position that we are going to default as a country. We will not. And the people of Kenya can be assured that our country will not default on our obligations. That is number one. And the reason why we will not default is because we have already applied brakes on any more borrowing. Our borrowing is going to be limited to only what we must borrow, right? Number two is because we are beginning the journey to grow our own savings and to grow our own revenues. By making sure that we have a plan on how to expand our tax base, by making sure that we digitize all government services and bring everybody into the net who is supposed to pay, making sure that the tax system is also friendly, making sure that our plan on saving is accelerated, as you have seen. Even on the Hustler Fund alone, we've already saved in 1 month 600 million Kenyan shillings. Once we scale up, you will see the kind of saving that we're going to do. Once we are finished with NSSF and all the other savings, and we are getting more Kenyans to do business, we will be in a position to expand our tax base. Okay. Apart from the personal loans we are giving on Hustler Fund, we will now scale it up to the loans to the SACCOs, to the chamas, to the other categories, and make sure that more people are engaged in enterprise. Okay. And to ensure that we expand our tax base, we grow our revenues, and we finance our development not by debt, not by borrowing, but by making sure that we use our own resources. And finally, on the issue of facing west, east, south, you know, we have the option of choosing friends. This is not a this versus that, you know. The more friends you have, it's like you have more assets. The more enemies you have, it's like you have more liabilities, you know. Who tells you we cannot be friends with China and be friends with America? Why? China and America are doing business. Who are we not to do business with everybody? You know? So you should be able to separate politics, you know, disagreements, you know, political positions with interests. We have interests as a nation. And if our interest leads us to work with China, we work with China. If our interests dictate that we must work with the West, we work with the West. You know, it is a mutually beneficial relationship. Okay. I am very happy that we have a good relationship with the East. I am also very happy that we are now developing a good relationship with the West.
Mr. President, would you look at that camera and admit to Kenyans that SGR was a haste? Mombasa, Nairobi was a haste.
What do you mean was a haste?
Obviously, it's been now documented that it was a huge theft of public funds, funding that SGR.
No, I cannot, you know, I cannot say what is not absolutely factual, you know. We developed the SGR. The only problem that SGR ran into is it ran into capture by a few people, so that it was not allowed to do what it was supposed to do, right? So we are, and by the way, it is in my plan to make sure that SGR pays for itself, okay, because it is possible.
Mr. President, you mentioned something, because you're now focusing on the pre-election pledges that you've been implementing, and you started with the Hustler Fund. And I listened to you in the Swahili episode, and you spoke about some 20 billion shillings has been borrowed so far. The figures we have from the ministry so far, as of today, are 12.8 billion shillings. I don't know how you account for that difference. But also, secondly, we know that the regulations that were prepared by the National Treasury and approved by Parliament say that, yes, money shall be appropriated by the House, but also there shall be a board to manage it. There shall be a secretariat to manage it. Who is managing the Hustlers Fund today?
On the figures, I have so many figures, you know, by virtue of my position. I deal with quite a host of figures. You are correct that the amount that we have lent is not 21 billion. It is 12.9 billion as of this evening, right? I went and checked the numbers because my minister actually sent me a text and said, this is the 21 I mentioned were the number of transactions. It's actually 21 million transactions that have taken place. All the other numbers are right that I mentioned. So there is no discrepancy between my numbers and the others. Let's leave that there. Your other question was on who is managing the Hustler Fund. I decided that we are going to use the benefit of technology to run this fund. And that is why this fund is successful. If we had gone the route of forming a committee in every village, and a committee in every constituency, and another committee in every... First, we would not even have formed the committees. Forget about disburse the money, right? I mean, technology works, my friend.
Which is true.
So what we have done is we have engineered. We already have the KNEST, which is approved by the RBA to manage the component of savings, you know, which is already in place. We have a board, yeah, that originally was part of KNEST, which is now the board we are adopting to run the Hustler Fund. And the Secretariat is actually a consortium that we established between the government and our national mobile operators.
But
and
President,
we have a complete Secretariat, including even a call center that makes sure that citizens can...
And that is good, Mr. President. Allow me to interject you. But regulations of your own government say that a board shall be constituted. In fact, the board has to be appointed by you, the president.
Yes.
The secretariat shall be appointed. The administrator will be appointed by that board. Now you're using the board of KNEST. How do you explain that difference?
KNEST, actually, the Hustler Fund is a product of KNEST. You know, that's how we developed it. You know, and you see, Sam, while I agree with you that processes are very good, and we should do processes, but I think results are better. You know, is the Hustler Fund working? Have we disbursed money? Are real Kenyans today beneficiaries? Is that agenda moving forward? That the processes are important. The results are also much more important. My submission to the people of Kenya is that for the first time, we have a product that doesn't require layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy, but a product that is working. The fact that a Kenyan somewhere, you know, he doesn't know William Ruto. He may not even know his MCA. He may not even be known by the Mzee wa Mitaa. But on his phone, somehow, he has gotten a government service and he has received 2,000 shillings and he is running his show. I think that's the best news ever.
Mr. President, shouldn't that be the board reason? Hustler Fund is such a far-reaching economic revolution, using your words. Shouldn't that be the board reason why it should be anchored in law, institutionalized properly, so that it's not, as you say, a William Ruto product?
Let me tell you, my good brother, Mr. Smart. Hustler Fund is anchored in law. Yeah, as I answered earlier, all the resources that are being used in Hustler Fund are public resources. We went through the public participation processes. We went through Parliament. We have established it. We went all the way to getting the license from the RBA to ensure that we are in compliance with the law, and to make sure that every requirement of law has been satisfied before we apply public resources. And I want to give you my assurance that the success of the Hustler Fund is the benefit we gain from digitization and technology. I was very impressed when our mobile operators were so patriotic that they were willing to be part of this product, even if it, to some extent, undermined some of their own products. But they saw the national good. They say, yes, we are making money here. But if we can have a government-sponsored program that reduces the interest rate from 300% to 8%, from 1% per day to 0.02% per day, let us support this program.
But how inclusive is the program, Mr. President, with the digitization and technology? We're speaking of more than 40 million Kenyans. In the first week of the Hustler Fund, more than 50% of those who borrowed are from Nairobi County. How inclusive nationally is the Hustler Fund?
For your information, your statistics are not right. You should look at the current spread of Hustler Fund. It is national. In fact, every county, the variation is actually it is only on population. The larger the population of a county, the more the people who are borrowed. The smaller the population of a county, it is just commensurate. And again, for your information, even though you may think that maybe there are some people, because of technology, they cannot be reached, Michelle, you will be very surprised because you can access Hustler Fund even on Mulikamuizi, you know? So long as you have a Mulikamuizi, you are in business. And you don't have to know nobody. You don't have to know anybody. Even your neighbor is not important. But they are only, the committee, as I said, the committee is 3 people, is 3. Yourself, your phone, and technology. Finish.
In case, because technology fails, Mr. President, in case Hustler Fund 2 years to come fails and there's something that goes wrong, who takes responsibility?
William Ruto takes responsibility.
Okay.
Beyond that, Mr. President.
We take a break because the
buck stops,
watching it.
The buck stops with me.
Okay.
Pesa ya wazee, Mr. President, in 1 minute, because there are people who are asking, pesa ya wazee iko wapi?
Pesa ya wazee is on. You know, contrary to stories being peddled around, you know, the challenges that we have faced with pesa ya wazee, the challenges we have faced with all the things that we're doing is because we do not have adequate public resources. You know, the roads stalled 1.5 years ago because there was no money to pay for them. You know, we must just appreciate that our economy was not doing well, and somebody needed to come and bring back our economy. And that is exactly what I am doing. And I want to promise the people of Kenya, I will sort out this economy and make sure that it serves us for now and for the future.
We need to take a short break, but the Kenyans are asking that as we're taking a break from the Swahili episode, you are not wearing a ring. Now you have one.
Sam, you are the only person who is also wearing a ring here. This one, it has no ring. This one has no...
Unfortunate information.
So anyway, you know, I saw that, you know, in a hurry to come here, you know, these characters, I was having some meetings in the office, and then they came and told me, go dress up, you know. So in the process of all that, I forgot my ring. And it's very interesting that it became a subject of discussion. I thought we were having a very serious conversation here about it. But anyway, let me tell you the story of the ring now that you have asked.
Yes.
You know, when Rachel and I got married, we went to that fellow called Nagin Patni, I think is there up River Road. So we bought rings there. So it was then 700 shillings. So of course it got tired along the way. So ikavunjika. So Rachel is the one who took so long to go and get a replacement. So when she got a replacement,